For what, dear?
You want a beauty soap for a beauty bath.
Well, I don't see anything there but my backside palm olive.
You want palm olive soap for a beauty bath. You want palm olive soap for your beauty bath. Yes, you want palm olive soap for your beauty bath.
Hi, my name's Larry Johnson, and I am Sandra's son. Sandra is the creator, founder, president of Nature's Common Sense. A few months ago, my mom and I were talking about our own personal experiences with soap throughout our lives when it hit us how much things have changed in just our own history in regards to something that we use almost every day. And it's not as if something as many of us have given much thought to previously. In fact, Sandra was telling me about how she can hardly remember even what brand of soap she was buying before she started making her own 20 years ago, back in 2002. My family's living history goes back to 1938 via my father, Sandra's husband, Larry Sr. My dad grew up in a different time and place back then in the early 1940s. In his little town of Coates, North Carolina, people still made their own soap. At least his grandmother did. Many times he has described to us how, as a little boy, he gathered sticks for the outdoor fire on soap making day. His grandfather would place a large pot on the fire, and he'd watch his grandmother stir for what seemed like hours. When she had finished, his grandfather would lift the pot off the fire and carry it into the wash house to cool. There it sat, full of soap, which hardened into one big lump. When his grandmother wanted to wash clothes, she hacked off a chunk, whatever size she needed. The earliest soap-making factory was discovered well over 4,000 years ago. The ingredients inscribed on the containers they put their soap mixture in were simply oil and ashes, which is basically what soap, or real soap, is made of today. My father's grandmother would probably have been able to purchase commercially produced lye, but her grandparents would have had to make their own. A process done, believe it or not, the same way for thousands of years. It just requires wood ashes and water.
Now, one soap is proved the mildest soap of all.
Milder than any other leading soap.
One soap is proved better for complexion care.
Better for complexion care.
That soap is
For Sandra,
Palmolive.
like most folks who grew up in the 1950s, the brands she remembers were Palmolive, Dove, and Ivory. Interestingly, as we were putting this together, we suddenly wondered if palm and olive oils were the main ingredients in Palmolive soap. And we were right. In 1898, the B.J. Johnson Soap Company, no relation to us, introduced Palmolive soap for a formula using palm and olive oil. Apparently, not much has changed in soap making, well, at least not in quality soap making. There have been considerable changes, though, in industrial soap making through the years. For one thing, the fats used now aren't real plant fats, for the most part, and the natural glycerin that would be created as the plant fats cook is now created by one chemical or another to substitute for the emollient and healing attributes of the natural glycerin.
Proved the mildest of all leading soaps. Proved better for complexion care.
Soap companies have gone to great lengths to try to make their soaps feel good while using ingredients that are all chemical. Dove soap, for example, is now made from, and you'll have to forgive me for butchering these, stearic acid, lauric acid, sodium stearate, sodium isethoniate, tetrasodium EDTA, and the list goes on. Not one natural plant or plant oil is included. Until I began making soap, I never thought about the ingredients, just as long as it smelled good and got the dirt off. The longer history of soap will occasionally pop up in our lives. There was a soap called Old Brown Windsor that was popular with Queen Victoria. It's also well documented that historical figures like Napoleon and Lewis and Clark had favorite soaps. Chances are this soap was popular because its ingredients had real herbs and spices that would fight bacterial and fungal issues. Here at Nature's Common Sense, we make a similar version of that soap today and call it simply Napoleon's. Up till recently, I can honestly say that I never had a favorite soap, or even one that I thought much about, at least not until we started making my mom's soaps 20 years ago. And even then, my favorite soap is probably the one she's just made.